her and her sister for about 6 weeks and just kind of got to know the culture. So I really enjoyed. And if you have any questions at the end about study abroad, I'd be happy to speak about it. So.
Hi everyone, I'm Nikki. I'm also a junior at UNC Chapel Hill. I'm a biology and sociology double major, and I'm also a pre-med, so I'm looking into medical school. Love dogs. Actually have a picture of my dog up there. His name's Duke. Yes, his name is Duke, and love him. He's actually I think he's outside my door right now. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, I want to be talking about South India in specific, and yeah, we can get started.
So we're to start with a couple of fun facts about each country. Just want you to guess what you might think it may be. And then we'll speak on it as we go one by one. So the first fun fact is it's the third largest soybean producer in the world. Guess which country you think it is.
India or Argentina? Yeah, 50-50 shot. Do you have a consensus?
Yeah, okay. All right, you can click it, Liz. And it is Argentina. So it is the third largest soybean producer in the world, behind the US and Brazil. And a lot of the soybean either goes for livestock production or just for like soy milk and other, and soy sauce as well. So these are the different uses of it. Yeah, number 2, shampoo was invented here.
I'm gonna go with India. I didn't even know she.
It is India. From what I understand, their shampooing was a practice that obviously they didn't use like traditional shampoos like what we use, like Pantene or something, but they had like powders or some sort of way because they wanted to cleanse themselves, and that's kind of a tradition that has carried on like through like across cultures, like through colonization and all that. And then the next one is they are the second largest English-speaking country in the world. I guess we can go ahead. It's India. India's one of the national languages of India is English. So both their national languages are Hindi and English, and they are one of the largest speaking English populations right now. And the next one is had 5 presidents in just 10 days in 2001.
You can click it. Yeah, so it is Argentina. That period of time was a lot of political turmoil in the country. Like it says, they had a lot of turnover in presidents in 2001. Now they're a little bit more consistent with their presidents that are elected pretty much every 4 years. And yeah, it hasn't been that bad ever since. So yeah, the next one, the game Snakes and Ladders originates from here. What do you think it is?
Go ahead. It's India. I think it originates from a lot of because a lot of colonization, we had a lot of movement throughout India, so that game kind of is a play on that.
Mm-hmm.
And then they are the largest democracy in the world. So you can go ahead.
Mm-hmm.
It's India. They are the largest democracy in the world because of their population is so huge. So I thought that would be a fun fact.
The next one is tango is a popular dance from this country. Oh, wow. Very overwhelming. Yeah, it is Argentina. It started specifically in the capital, Buenos Aires. And it's kind of a mixture between indigenous, Afro-Argentine, and European kind of influences all kind of being explored in the dance itself. The last one is they won the FIFA World Cup in 1986. Yep. The soccer team there is very, very huge. the national soccer team becomes very intense, and the games can be very dangerous if you're not on the side of the majority. So very encouraged. I personally did not go to any soccer games there, but it's very encouraged to keep a low profile while you're there so you don't make anyone angry. Yeah, we can go to the next slide.
So me and Kierra are just gonna go back and forth and just talk about India and Argentina, just to talk about the school life, and you guys can be able to compare it to your lives here in school in America. So just to give some background, I'm just gonna talk about India in very generally. So India is a very diverse country. There's so many states, so many languages, so many cultures. And I'm specifically gonna focus on South India, but I'm briefly just gonna talk about North India right now. North India and South India are very different. If you look at South India is actually very populated. They have a lot of vegetation, a lot of farmers, a lot of agriculture goes down there. So a lot of the rice production comes from South India. So a lot of food originates from South India. While you look at North India, the climate's a lot drier. You see if you think about like the seven wonders of the world, Taj Mahal is up north, Red Fort, a lot of like battles and war actually happened up in North India. If you look across the continent, religion is it's very diverse there. People practice Hinduism, Islam, and Christianity. If you look up north, it's mainly Hindus and Islam, but while down south, it's a mix of Hinduism, Islam, and Christianity, just because a lot of missionaries tend to go to a little state or a country called Kerala. It's like near the coast. I think I might have a star. I actually don't. But specifically, actually right now, India is in some political turmoil if you're interested. If you look at the news, there's some sort of nationalist laws being passed right now that are segregating Hindus and Muslims. So there's a lot. I'm not too like well versed in it, but if you're interested in that, you should definitely check it out because it's a current event going on right now. And my family specifically, I'm South Indian. My family speaks Telugu. So we're from Andhra Pradesh. It's in South India. My mom lives across like in the beach area, and my dad's from a small village. I don't want to mispronounce the name, so I'm not going to say it. But India is I think it's a very cool continent, which makes their schooling systems very different from one another. Go to the next slide.
Yeah, so Argentina, like I mentioned earlier, the capital is Buenos Aires. The population of the country is 44 million. It's the second largest country in South America. Buenos Aires specifically receives a lot of traffic from all over the world, as well as South America itself is one of the most visited cities in South America. And so their Independence Day is July 9th, not too far from where ours is day-wise. And they have such a diverse geography as well. There's Patagonia. If you've ever seen anybody wearing the jackets, for example, Patagonia, that's kind of where that region comes from. It's in the south, and there are glaciers there. In the west, along the Chile-Argentine line is the Andes Mountains. In the northeast, there's Iguazu Falls. It's kind of in between Argentina and Peru itself. And you have like fertile flatlands in the center is usually where they produce all the soybeans. And finally, there are beaches along the Atlantic coastline. But the capital that I'm in, there is not really for beaches, more so for ports and shipments and just receiving things for be able to export as well.
So we're gonna start by just talking about transportation to school in India. I'm sure like for you guys too, you either have buses or cars. I know when I went to high school, my school actually did not have a busing system, so we had to carpool or drive ourselves to school. In India, they predominantly rely on public transportation, which is really different from how I grew up. I grew up in Charlotte, so for me, it's like, it was very much so you have to drive everywhere. But in India, people actually rely on public transportation to get anywhere, including school systems. So I think on your upper right, there's a rickshaw, and below it, there's also a rickshaw. They're called auto rickshaws because they're motorized versions of they're kind of like small taxis. And then over to the right of that rickshaw, you'll see like a public transportation bus. There's differences in schools. Schools will have both public and private busing systems, and that usually just depends on the tuition that the students have to pay, because there's government schools versus private schools. And India's schooling system, unlike America, it's not free. K through 12, you're paying for your education all the way through. And if you don't pay your tuition, you unfortunately cannot attend school unless the government is assisting you. And below that, we have a rickshaw, which is it's not motorized, so it's not an auto rickshaw. So people actually will bike students. They'll bike over like 10 to like 20 students, similar to the rickshaw, to the auto rickshaw. They'll have those cars like packed with kids. So I can assume they're very heavy. And I actually have a small video linked if you guys wanted to watch an example of a rickshaw in India. And it's about a minute long, so.
They may look like portable prisons, but these unique rickshaws are one of India's most unusual modes of transport. Weaving through Delhi's notoriously busy traffic, these modified rickshaws have been fitted with special cages to take children to school. Every morning, driver Prem Singh picks up students from designated points around the city.
And as you can see, the rickshaws are actually driving alongside normal traffic. So honestly, in my opinion, I don't think it's that safe, but this is something very typical to go to school in India, since that's the easiest mode of transportation.
And when he is on the road, Prem is extra careful with his young passengers.
But they will have their own safety protocols. Like he'll mention that they'll drive on the side of the road just because. Or they'll drive behind a car just to make sure if they got hit, the car would get damaged, but they wouldn't get hit.
With the students delivered safely to school, Prem takes a well-earned rest. But it won't be long before he's back weaving through traffic on his alternative three-wheeler.
And this rickshaw actually is a very organized version of a rickshaw that I've seen when I've been to India before. Usually we'll see kids actually crowded in the rickshaw. They won't be like perfectly seated where you'll have 3 kids on one side and 3 on the other. You'll have kids pouring out of the vehicle, which kind of makes the bike itself like very unbalanced. And that itself is a very like interesting part of transportation in India.
Oh, sorry, you can keep clicking. It was like 2 more. Yeah. Okay, so in Buenos Aires, it's pretty much similar in the sense that a lot of people take the public transportation. In my case, because I was taking classes while I was there, I would usually take the subway. It's called the subte. And there are about 6 or 7 lines that run beneath the city. And yeah, you kind of take that. And I will warn, if you ever are interested in going to Buenos Aires, around 6 o'clock, the traffic is very terrible. And it gets to a point where it's kind of like sardines in a can, where it's very difficult to get onto the subways to be able to get back home. But yeah, in the case of the buses, they're also very, I thought they were very complicated. They're probably a little bit easier if you've been there a while. But yeah, a lot of people take the buses. And in the bottom corner, you see the woman holding the card, and that's the sube. And that's what you use to be able to enter into the subways and buses, and I think taxis as well. Or you could just walk to school. Oftentimes I would walk to a certain point before getting to the subway, and different parents kind of took their children to not middle school, but first school and then secondary school. They would walk their children to their classes every day in the mornings or in the afternoon, because those are usually split up into 2 sessions. So that's how you get to the school. And just to kind of explain how UBA, so UBA is the University of Buenos Aires, and it's not how you would kind of picture a normal campus such as UNC, for example, where everything is kind of in one area. It's really spread throughout the entire city. So I was at the Facultad de Filosofía and Letras, which is like philosophy and art, and the different kind of faculties that are spread throughout the city. You can have one for law, for medicine, for psychology. Yeah, these are different locations in the city that you kind of have to take public transportation to get to, but for the most part, all of your classes are going to be in one building. And there's a short video just outside of where I studied to kind of give you a picture of what it looks like on a day-to-day basis. Yeah, I think you can decide.
Okay, I'm gonna go through this pretty quickly. So in southern Indian K-12 schools, they actually don't have a K-12. They have something called UKG and LKG, which is their equivalent of preschool and kindergarten, maybe a little bit of first grade. where you're learning your visual and motor skills, you're just playing games, having fun, getting used to the school environment. And then you go through first grade, or they call them standards, they don't call them grades, so they'll be say you're in first standard, second standard. So from first standard to 10th standard, that's like basically their school system. And 11th and 12th or 11th and 12th standards is their equivalent of high school. So that's when they're actually applying for entrance into professional schools, unlike for us where we go to 4 years of undergrad and maybe we go to graduate school or schooling after if we want to. They have to 11th and 12th grade are their deciding years, and after that they'll apply to like engineering schools or computer science schools or medical schools. So basically at the age of 18 they could essentially start training to become a doctor. Unlike me over here, I would have to start, if I got into medical school after undergrad, I would start at the age of 22. So there is like a slight delay in how you enter your professional career. On a day-to-day basis, a lot of Indian schools, they'll start with some sort of prayer or like Pledge of Allegiance, which at the bottom left is what you see, like the whole entire school kind of stands out there. This doesn't matter what grade you're in. Depending on the school, a lot of schools will use the floor, so they won't have a lot of desks depending on how much funding they have, especially if they're in a rural area, so they'll use the floor and they'll have chalkboards. But if you're obviously in a more technologically developed school, they'll have like things like smart boards or whiteboards and like proper desks and chairs, just like schools here have. And in the upper left, you'll just see like students will have like a lot of recreational time. Like if you have PE in like middle school, till 10th grade, they'll always have PE because recreational time and exercise is very like coveted in Indian schools. Like they want to make sure their kids are being active and having time to play games like basketball or cricket and staying physically active. Go to the next slide.
Yeah, so just the day-to-day or what the daily life is like at the school that I went to. So you would go, and usually on the outside of the building you can see where the person is walking. There's street art there, but there's also a lot of vendors selling food and jewelry and things like that. And if you go inside, there's about 3 levels. It's actually kind of, you can't really see it, but it's a very large courtyard within the school itself that's exposed to the outdoor elements. But yeah, you would go to class every day, taking things such as history or different arts and kind of general education subjects. And one of the things that got me is they tend to sell a lot of, they're kind of like croissants, a little bit smaller than croissants, and they're very cheap. It was about 16 cents. And so every morning I would kind of go there to be able to start my day of classes. And usually a lot of people like to drink coffee. Coffee is very big there. And yeah, I think that's pretty much it for the daily life of how to get to school and how it's all structured. I guess with regards to breakfast and lunch, a lot of students usually went off campus just to get their lunch at a different cafe or one of the vendors that sold food outside of the school itself. So yeah, you can find lots of options.
In India, when we're looking at classes in India, classes are very similar to the type of things we learn in the US. They'll have social sciences, science, math, English, depending on the school. Some schools are considered English medium schools, which means that everything instructed is taught in English, and their native language will be taught as like how we learn Spanish as a second language or French. They'll be taught their native language as a classroom like that. But there'll also be like, since I speak Telugu, they would have a Telugu medium school, which basically means everything is instructed in Telugu or taught in Telugu, and they would have an English class on the side just so they would have some sort of knowledge of English. Usually LKG, UKG, you'll be just kind of like how we have kindergarten and preschool here. You're just learning motor skills, building friendships, learning how to interact with your peers. You go through first through 10th grade, you're doing all these science classes. 11th and 12th grader, when you're taking these large entrance exams. I was going to show a video of how a school looks like in India, but I thought it'd be interesting. Indian school days tend to last from like a little longer than American school days, and I think it's accounting for the fact that their meal time and their activity time is longer than what we have. I know in high school I had maybe 15-20 minutes to eat lunch and then go to class again. there they would probably have about like 30-45 minutes. And I have a small video linked at the bottom left where it says trying India's free government food. And if we can go to minute
So they're now
and we can just
preparing the food that they're going to give to the students at 2 o'clock. And these are the master chefs. Namaste.
Namaste.
Do a good job, because I'm going to eat too.
But it's okay.
The mega pulver.
Yeah.
Looks like tortillas.
But they basically make
This is
food
free
in
for
the
this-
out of these and will serve it. So I think that's why it takes a longer time for their meals, since everyone will be eating together on the floor instead of having periods like we do, where we have like different periods of people go to eat. They'll have all the classes eat together at the same time, and they're just hanging out and eating together, eating the same meal.
Should I keep playing the video or go to the other one?
You can go to the next slide.
Okay.
Yeah, so typical classes at the university. So like I said earlier, you can have things such structure. One of the classes that I took was around their history. So beginning in the 1880s up until modern history today. We learned about different presidents, different movements, whether it be cultural or political or social. And one of the things I really like to point out about the schools, especially at the one that I was attending, is just the amount of posters along the walls. The school is very political in the sense that you'll find lots of students campaigning or just putting up different art and different posters in support of or against different political candidates that are running at the moment. And actually when I was there, they were campaigning for, I'm pretty sure it was a presidency. So they were kind of in that different period in time. And so it kind of reminds me of when I was, well now actually just the fact that, we're doing our own political campaigns at the university, and it's the election year for our school here as well. So it's cool to be able to compare the two different experiences with regards to politics. And then the picture on the right, you can see in the middle with the striped shirt is one of my instructors there. He was the one who was teaching us about just literature and culture in general from Argentina, whether it be, what about the tango? We actually took a tango class. The music, different key figures in Argentine music history. And yeah, you can see some of my fellow classmates. I wasn't able to take any classes with other students there because ours are strictly just for American students. Well, not American specifically, but for students applying for study abroad. But there are definitely ways that you can be able to enter classes with students that are actually from Argentina and are taking the more difficult classes, I would say. But yeah, I really enjoyed this experience. So I guess you can go to the next slide. One more. Yeah. So she already mentioned earlier just about different recreational activities that are taking place in India, but in Argentina, a lot of the things that people really enjoy, like I mentioned earlier, is soccer. In the case of the university, it doesn't have a specific sports team, whether it be soccer, volleyball, or basketball. So you have to go to outside clubs to be able to have those experiences. And so in the bottom picture, you can see a stadium there. There are about 28 stadiums all across the capital city of Buenos Aires. And yeah, a lot of people really enjoy going to those games. They're very exciting. I remember not for club soccer, but for the national team, a lot of people kind of either shut down or they kind of minimize the amount of operations that are happening because they want to focus completely on what's happening in the soccer game. Yeah, other activities you can get in park are going to cafes. There's so many cafes around the building itself. Coffee, like I mentioned earlier, different croissants. There is a very lovely treat there called dulce de leche. Usually serve it with different, usually just bread that's been toasted. You can have it with your coffee. It kind of tastes like caramel. It's really good, or you can fill it with, you can put it in churros as well if you like churros. And then the last recreational activity is just kind of going to the park. So oftentimes when I would leave my classes, I would walk down that street that you saw earlier, and there's a park about 7 minutes away or less of a walk, and you can just sit there and relax, and there's fountains, and a lot of people bring their dogs. There's so many dogs in the city, so I really enjoy, because I enjoy dogs. But yeah, these are different opportunities. You can relax and decompress after you get out of your classes at the end of the day.
So if we have time, we'd love if you want to discuss with a partner one thing that you liked about school in Argentina and India, and maybe explain why, and then one thing you disliked about school in Argentina and India, and explain why. And we can give you some, like 2 minutes or 3 minutes to do that.
They like the 16-cent croissants.
Oh.
You're supposed to get it, Jenny.
They were really good. It was very hard to, because I would have to bring cash. And so usually sometimes I would forget to bring cash on a day-to-day basis, depending, because I didn't really want to spend all my money. But it was very hard and tempting to not buy the croissants, but they were really good, especially in the morning when you want something warm. Because when I went there, it was pretty much transitioning into their winter time. So yeah, our summers and their winters are pretty much reversed. That was a pretty cool experience. Anything else?
What did you say, Seth?
Sitting on the floor.
Sitting on the floor and eating.
One day I could do that.
Don't duck, Seth. Yeah, they do have longer lunch periods.
It is an open game.
Really doesn't like the transportation in India.
Okay. Well,
All right.
yeah, we can move on to the final slide. So if any of y'all have questions about school in either Argentina or India, studying abroad in college, or just being a university student, feel free to ask any questions about them or any of the things that we discussed in the presentation that you didn't have so much clarity about.
Y'all have any questions for them? How much did it cost to do the study? How much did it cost to study abroad?
So in Argentina, the program cost me, well, look, I got a scholarship, so that was one thing that helped out. But if I had not, it would have been about $6,000 to do study abroad in the summer. And so usually I would recommend, if you don't get a scholarship, is to do an exchange program during the semester, and that'll roughly keep it about the same cost as what it would cost you here in, whatever university you eventually go to. It'd be roughly about that same cost, or it could be cheaper depending on which country you go to and the cost of living as well. But for my program, it was about $6,000. I really enjoyed.
Can you tell them what you did to get the scholarship?
Yeah, so I remember the summer before, or when I was applying for schools, actually, there was a specific part where you kind of indicate if you're interested in any kind of global experience. And so you have to write essays, get recommendations. And so I was able to find out, actually before I got to UNC, that I got a scholarship to be able to go whatever, during any kind of summer while I'm here, to go and apply it to a program. So looking for scholarships ahead of time helps out a lot. There's lots of resources that universities offer that can help you with finding them and applying for them.
And every semester, a lot of colleges will have like fellowships to like certain areas. Like they'll have fellowships to like South America, India. You're always welcome to apply because they'll be on a rolling basis. So there will always be opportunities to somehow find some sort of funding to fund your study abroad experience, because I definitely think it's a cool experience to have.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions?
I think they're good.
Okay.
All right. Perfect timing.
Yes, timing. Thank y'all so much.
Thank you so
All
much.
right. Thank you, Ms. Blyson. Thank you guys for your participation. We appreciate it. And I hope you guys have a good weekend. And we will see you in our next presentation.
All right, perfect. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.